I mean, like I said, I felt that way Monday. Like on a brand new study, I had no clue what the site had or what they didn't have yet.
Okay.
And I only had like 2 hours to do it. Like an hour with the PI and then another hour. So it's like I had no time. I didn't have all day to figure it out.
Okay.
So I was like just moving fast. But what did you?
So in a scenario like that, what you looking at? What probably
priorities?
Regulatory
Priorities, yeah. In that case, it's the training log, right? Because that was a SIV.
Okay.
So training log is like #1 priority. If I do a SIV and I don't leave with a training log signed by everyone there, that's like the biggest rookie mistake you can have.
Okay.
Especially at a busy place like where I was, where the doctors are going somewhere else to treat cancer patients.
Okay.
Like.
It was oncologist then?
Yeah.
Okay.
So to go like follow them around, first of all, I wouldn't even be able to. And then you'd be embarrassed to even ask or tell your line manager. I did the training, but I forgot to get people to sign.
Okay.
So you gotta think quick, like in those cases, like what's #1 priority? In that case, it was training, right? Fine.
Okay.
If it's IMV, might be different. Like maybe the site just had an SAE, and that you're aware of, and the first priority is let's follow up with that with the SAE because the sponsor wants resolution on it.
Okay.
Or maybe the site had like an IP excursion, or maybe the site had a deviation that's of concern. Like, you have to kind of figure these things out.
On the cuff?
Yes.
All right.
Sometimes you'll know in advance, like what the issues were, but sometimes you won't. And you'll just figure it out when you're there.
Okay.
When I go for a IMV, the first thing I do is I ask the coordinator if there have been any new members added to the study.
Okay.
Because if that happens, then I know that's going to be time consuming for me. Then I got to train these people, or we have to make sure that they have training on the protocol, right?
Oh, so you say new members, you mean new staff members?
New staff members.
Okay, not new people to...
New staff members, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Like to the delegation log and or to the 1572.
Okay.
Right? So that's like, that's a big theme is training is huge. I mean, that's kind of what you do as a CRA. Now, you don't have to do the training other than at the SIV. So the only time you have, as a CRA, have to do the training is at the SIV. Because that's like the sole purpose, or the primary purpose while you're there. It's optional at IMVs. Do you know when you would do training at an IMV? Like if...
Obviously, if a new person is new staff, or deviations.
New person, yeah, new personnel. Deviations.
Amendments.
Amendments, yeah, absolutely. Deviations. Now, do you have to do training at IMV?
I think yes.
So, it depends on the CRO. But usually, you don't. It's not mandatory here. It's only mandatory at SIV.
Okay.
Here, if the time permits, because remember, the PI is supposed to train, or the site is supposed to train new personnel.
Okay.
Maybe for deviations you can, and for amendments, the site is also supposed to train their own staff. So the only time you would jump in is if it's an ongoing action item that's not getting done. Right? Or if you have the time, if time permits. And oftentimes, time doesn't permit. As you saw yesterday. I mean, imagine doing that and doing the SDV and then doing the IP accountability with monitoring. I mean, that's, you know, that took the whole day.
Okay.
And we did like a Cliff Notes version of it. So that's it's optional here, but you can do it if you have time. Or if the sponsor or your line manager asks you to do it. And there's always things to focus on for these IMVs. Because remember, SIV only happens once. IMVs, they go on all the time, and then there's a closeout visit at the end. And at the closeout visit, there's no training. Typically, there's no training unless they missed a particular training on an amendment. Which they shouldn't have if you've been monitoring properly. At closeout, what you're doing is you're finalizing all SAEs and final IP reconciliation or accountability. And that's pretty much it. And at site selection visit, there's no training at all. There's no need to train them. It's more of an assessment of the site's capabilities and their recruitment. So that's it. Like, if you know this, that's pretty much, you know, everything that it takes to be a monitor. I mean, of course you can break down all of these things like we did in the modules, but that's really what it is. So now you guys know the rules. Now it's all about learning the exceptions. Like, that's really what separates a new CRA from an experienced one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Exceptions to, okay.
Like things that are not ordinary, like, for example, an SIV where the PI says I only have 30 minutes. You know, then you drop everything you're doing and make sure that she gets trained on the protocol. You don't want to let her go and then not have it. I almost did this Monday.
Not have it signed that that training was done.
Yeah.
Because if something happened, it comes back to you.
Yeah, they always say, well, why didn't you do it? Did you do the training? Yeah. How come they didn't sign it?
I forgot.
I forgot. It's not good.
What means it wasn't done then, so it's not documented.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
My only option there to save face would be to go chase down that PI and like bother her in her treatment.
Okay.
Just to get something signed. She'd be upset, maybe. But better to get it done. So those are like the exceptions. Like, let's say the PI doesn't think that something is a SAE, but you think it is. So what makes a SAE an SAE and not part of a medical history? Like, those kind of things are exceptions. You'll sometimes get them arguing with you. Like, hey, this is not a SAE, this is part of their medical history. But if it's an exacerbation of their medical history, then it technically is a SAE.
Okay.
So you'll get a lot of that also.
So
when in doubt,
in that scenario, how's it documented? How's it written up?
well, you should stick to what you believe. Okay. But ultimately, if they really have an issue, it should be escalated to the medical monitor.
Okay.
Because a lot of times the doctor, the PI is going to say, hey Jackie, I mean, it's great that you're a CRA, but I'm a doctor, alright? And you're wrong. They're going to say that.
Yeah, let's have that conversation.
And you're like, okay, well, we have a medical monitor who's also a doctor, and he's a specialist just like you are, and I'm sure he'll agree with me. But we can find out. But make sure you're right, because if you're wrong, that's it.
The only reason I'm not a doctor is I didn't want it. That's nothing to do with your intelligence.
But you'll get that a lot. Like, you'll get them talking down. You'll, like, in the SIVs, when you do training, sometimes the doctors are going to say, hey, skip through this slide. I already know this.
Mm-hmm.
So then you use your judgment, like, okay, maybe you should skip that. Like, if it's GCP. Part of every SIV training is, like, a review of good clinical practice. Mm-hmm. And if a PI's been doing that for 15 years, I mean, and they tell you to skip, I think you can, but just remind them of the important stuff, which are, what's the most important thing for a PI to understand?
Patient safety.
Mm-hmm. And what about in regards to the FDA?
Informed consent. I mean, no, patient safety.
Patient safety, right. But all the blame for anything that goes on in the study is with them.
Right. So the PI
that's their most, right. So just remind them, when you sign that 1572, this is your contract with the FDA, and no matter what happens, I don't care who your coordinators are or how bad they are, like, it's all your fault from the FDA's perspective, and it's your responsibility. So if they tell you to skip ahead, just give them that disclaimer.
Okay.
That's what I did on Monday, and it worked well. They didn't appreciate it, but it worked well.
In the case where your assumption is like that they have done the GCP over and over, right?
Right.
And you're letting them skip don't you think it's necessary to have a note to file to let them know that?
No, you can put in your report.
Just put in the report, okay.
I reviewed GCP, the PI told me they understand. I reminded them of their responsibility. I think verbatim what I told the PI, she's like, yeah, skip through those. And I said, okay, bottom line, it's your responsibility. And she just like kind of snarled. She's like, okay, you'll get that, but it's okay. Yeah, well, she could have been busy or had a bad day. I mean, it doesn't matter.
Do you get the same attitude, in a sense, on your sites?
From the CRAs?
From the PI?
Yeah, but not like, I mean, they know me more, so
okay.
It's kind of more aggressive, not passive aggressive.
It's passive aggressive.
The one here, yeah, this is on video. He's cool. He's cool. Cool as hell. But no, you'll get that. You'll get that sometimes. I've actually had like pretty good PIs. Of course, you get into it. It's like being a family. Because in this case, he's a partner.
Okay.
So, yeah, you know, you like argue with your spouse. And I mean, if you didn't, that would not be normal.
Or with new friends.
With new friends.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah, you guys argue like all the time here.
Yeah.
So,
can you monitor for your own sites?
No, that's one thing. You can't monitor for your own sites. I can do QA here. That's my role.
Okay.
Like, Monica's the coordinator, Kobe's the assistant, soon-to-be coordinator. My role here is QA. Like, they do the visits and then I review. I'm like the internal monitor.
Okay.
Which is what you guys have on your CVs too, by the way.
Okay.
So that's like a prequel to our one-on-ones where I'm gonna help you defend your CV when they ask you certain things. But no, you can't monitor your own sites. Matter of fact, the monitoring jobs that I do have, I went out of my way to get an attorney to put it in there that I own clinics.
Okay.
Just to be sure. Because as an independent contractor, you worry about getting sued, maybe, right? As an employee, you don't need to worry about that. No one's going to sue their own employee. But for a contractor, it happens. So, you know, full disclosure, I own these sites. I will never recommend these sites, but if you need these sites, they're here, but I wouldn't be able to monitor them.
Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, but that doesn't happen that often. I mean, there's 100,000 studies, so the chance of that is very slim. You know, maybe in 100 lifetimes it's possible.
Okay.
That's really slim.
What else do you guys have questions about or findings this time around? Any new findings you didn't find last time?
I was just curious in terms of, I saw something to do with the ECG report or whatever, and it was not documented at the time, and the patient seemed to have been randomized. So in that event, like, I know that it's more like PI oversight because the PI should have coded, but doesn't that warrant like an SAE that falls into your hands in the event that that was abnormal?
So what happened actually?
I saw that the ECG was uploaded later. And that it was supposed to be used to confirm the inclusion-exclusion criteria.
That's more of a deviation.
It's more of a...
That's a deviation, and it would be missed procedure. There's different criteria for deviations, I think.
It wasn't a deviation log. I was just writing it down for myself to remember.
It should have been a deviation. Did they make them do it?
Yeah, they did a deviation log, but I was just thinking out loud, like in the event that it went out of the exclusion.
We're lucky then, because if it were to be an SAE, that would be that would be a deviation that we would basically have a patient that wouldn't qualify. That is in the study. And that could be I mean, that would warrant a Kappa plan. Because that's a big one. That would affect patient safety.
If as a monitor found something as minor as this where multiple boxes are checked on the same line.
Oh, yeah. So what, and this one looks like it's in pencil. That one looks like it's in pen. So yeah, that would be like an Alcoa.
And what is this? Which was supposed to be initial.
Yeah, initial on day. So what I would do is like retrain them on documentation.
Okay.
Or have them retrain the site and put it as an action item.
So I can take it off now.
Yeah, on these reports, you want to put anything, even minor stuff. You want to put everything in there. They should be thorough reports, so that you're CYA, right? It's not so much being like nitpicking. It's that you being thorough. Like you're supposed to find every minor thing. Like if headers are not completed, and maybe if you decide, and this is where it gets subjective, if you decide that this warrants a retraining and you have time, you can retrain, right? Or you can just put a recommendation as action item, site should retrain staff on this by next monitoring visit. And then if that's not done, and you don't want that to be ongoing, then you can do it at that point.
Okay.
Again, if time permits. If it doesn't permit, you have to just keep reminding them to do it again. This is where like you learn the exceptions, not the rules.
So I know in terms of the GCP, it's more of safety of the subject. So I also came across somebody who didn't want to do the early term. They decided not to do the study, but they also referred to the early term safety. But in this case, they're an Alzheimer's patient. Would you insist that maybe the doctor push it, or how do you go about that?
Yeah, I mean, if they're documenting that they've attempted to have an early term, but the patient refuses, and it's documented, there's really not much you can do, because the other extreme of that is like coercing the patient to do something they don't want. So then the IRB is not okay with that.
So even if it's at the expense of their safety?
Yeah, yeah. As long as it's documented that you've made the attempt, you don't want to push too far, because the IRBs will take that as coercion, or you're not letting them withdraw. Like there's cases, I know a clinic, I know who owns this clinic, they do inpatient psych studies, schizophrenia, and their patients like literally don't know what's going on, right? But one of the patients wanted to leave, and they wouldn't let them. The site wouldn't let them leave.
Really?
And so the debate was, can they leave if they're asking for it, or is it part of their medical history and safety to keep them in? And obviously the site is incentivized to keep them in because they get paid per day. But if the patient really wants to leave and is not out of their mind, but the site uses that argument, like, it becomes like some ethical stuff. And this patient, I heard it from the patient himself, because he later came here to do an outpatient study, and he told me the story. So I can understand like why the site would not want someone to leave if it's not, like if they're a danger to themselves or others for psych, then you should restrain them in a hospital setting. But in research, there's a lot of gray area there, because it's not really a hospital and it's not really treatment. But there's also the ethical concern. So that's like the PIs has to be subjective and figure out what's best for that patient. Outside of billing for the bed days, which unfortunately takes priority for most. But so that's a very similar one there, where as long as it's documented properly, the site covers itself. But in the real world, it's a different story. Because that patient swears they were fine to leave. And they're never going to join a study with that site again, so I don't know. But maybe they weren't. I wasn't there, so I have no idea. And I'm not a psychiatrist, so I wouldn't know. But if they're homicidal or suicidal, I don't think you should let them out, even if they want to.
Yeah.
But if they're not, then you should.
So if they're homicidal, suicidal.
In psych inpatient studies, you do get that.
Yeah,
because you're taking somebody in the unit, then you're taking them off of their antipsychotics
and putting them on,
and then putting them on the study drug. So in that period where they're like not on anything, yeah, they will get
crazy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And if they ask to leave during that period because they're paranoid, do you let them? Because it's
And I'm thinking down the road. If they go out, if they leave that study, you let them out. and they go out and kill somebody.
That's right.
Is that site now held accountable for that?
Yeah, because technically you could be considered that you were a hospital. Why'd you let them out?
Wow.
But it's not treatment, really. It's research. So there's a lot of loopholes. It's just messy.
Yeah, that one is.
That's what I'm saying, the exceptions, not the rules, because that's really where they're going to pay the big bucks. And as a CRA, if you're seeing this, like, you need to see a clear narrative of the rationale for why they didn't let them out. And if the site is documenting patient is requesting to be released from the inpatient study, however, PI believes he's a danger to himself or others at this point, we will withdraw him from study meds and put him on regular antipsychotics. And then when he's stable, we'll let him out. That would be like the correct course of action. Withdraw from study, because they're asking to be withdrawn from study, but don't let them out. Put them on current standard of treatment.
So the question is, at that case, what do you get the current standard of treatment? Who pays for that?
At that point, either the sponsor would,
okay,
or their insurance would, because at that point they'd be transferred from the study to the hospital unit.
Okay.
Which is going to be in the same place, right?
Okay.
They're just no longer under the research protocol.
Gotcha.
Medicaid will take care of it.
So in that
Medicaid.
Medicare, yeah, that's most likely what they'll do. Medicare.
Medicare will take care of it.
But if the site really pushed for it, the sponsor would reimburse. But it's a lot of paperwork, so they don't need that. They just do it through Medicare. And it's not like it's Medicare fraud in that case. It's a legitimate
concern, situation.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So that's an interesting dilemma. That's very much related to what you brought up with the early term, but a more extreme example of that.
On the early term, right there, was the PI recommending that early term, or did the patient wanted the ET? Okay.
Patient withdrew consent.
Okay.
And they didn't want to come back. Sometimes patients they'll get upset with the coordinator for whatever reason, and they're like, "I'm done. Like, I don't want anything anymore." And so, they're withdrawing consent. You should document and encourage them to do an early term. Say, hey, for your own safety, come back. We'll do an early term because you still get compensated for it. So at least you're documenting that you're offering. And then again, the whole thing about withdrawing someone, if they're not the patient of that clinic, do you notify the doctor or do you not? And it all depends on what the patient consented
early on. If they consented for their records to be released.
Correct.
Get in touch with their doctor.
But even if they say, no, I do not want my doctor to know, you can give the patient a copy of their most recent lab result.
And say, take it to your doctor.
Or ECG or whatever it was that was clinically significant. And say, here's yours. I'm not giving it to anyone else but you. It's up to you to show your doctor if you want. Or another doctor. So at least you're doing something. You're documenting and that you have patient safety. And you can even put, we're not notifying the doctor because the patient did not consent to it, but we did give them, the more detail the better. Because these FDA auditors, they don't care, they just want to see
We're not going to
scary stuff.
Maybe I should do that.
Scary.
You're moving over to my side.
Yeah, she's going to be an auditor.
We should do that together.
You guys would all make good auditors.
Really?
Yeah.
So we handcuffs on the Bible, huh? You're going to jail, but I'm going to do something to get you out of here. You're going to be locked up, but we're going to free your soul.
That's right. What else do you find? Any other things that you're not confident about?
It kind of boils down to the same, like the ECG missing, going in later. Then the medical records. There's one I saw, the medical records from the PCP. They claimed that the subject was on bipolar medication, and then the doctor couldn't get in touch with.
That is a very good one.
Yeah.
So, like, in the real world, doctors, especially psychiatrists, but maybe not especially, but that's what I'm more familiar with, they prescribe off-label. Like, they'll give lithium. Lithium's only supposed to be given as a mood stabilizer for bipolar. But they use it a lot for schizophrenics. They use it for Alzheimer's. because they go through moods too. They may not be diagnosed with mood disorder or bipolar, but doesn't mean lithium won't work. Like lithium will work on us too if we take it. We'll be way more calm, right? Even if you're already calm, like it'll work on you.
I need some of that.
So in this case, the medical monitor saw that, and the medical monitor is a researcher, not a practitioner, and he said, hey, this patient should be bipolar, because he's only used to like the textbooks. But in our PI said, no, that's not the case, this is used off label all the time. They went back and forth on this for a year about this, because we didn't want to say that that was a deviation, because if the patient's bipolar, if we did what the medical monitor wanted, then we would have had a bunch of deviations, because then we randomized someone who meets an exclusion criteria. So that's not the case. We weren't going to do that. That's what the sponsor wanted us to do, because their data would then look clean for the FDA, but we didn't do that. And I honestly don't know how that resolved.
Well,
I just
according to
checked
the
out.
notes, it said that they claimed that he wasn't on a medication, and 2010 was the last time he took the medication. So it was more like it wasn't necessary. And then the doctor was saying, and the doctor was saying he couldn't get in touch with the PCP. But when he was looking at it, it kind of got brushed off because he couldn't find the PCP, and he had not taken the medication since 2010. So it was like it was okay for him to be on it. And,
Okay.
you know.
That took like a year for them to figure that out. I remember I was on a couple of those calls, and it was like, you know, we have like a psychiatrist, medical monitor, but he's like an academic, never seen a patient in his life, and then our PI who sees patients all the time, right? And they're living different worlds, even though they're studying the same thing. So that's another one that's like an exception, not a rule. What else? Drug accountability, you guys comfortable with that?
I just had Monica go back over it. But I wasn't comfortable with it yesterday. I'm gonna go back through the numbers. With the one we did yesterday. Play with the numbers.
Yeah.
Cause I wasn't that comfortable with it.
Yeah, it's really like all about counting days and counting pills. Like, and the whole benefit of that calculator that she had was it counts the days faster than
Then you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it won't make mistakes, like accidentally counting twice or something.
I like the way they did in the formula. That's amount used equals total capsules dispensed minus the total capsules returned, and then it has a compliance formula.
Yeah.
I thought that was quite nice. That's why I wrote it down for me.
Yeah, that's interesting, and that's for pills. You know, like for cancer, sometimes you'll have like infusions. So it'd be like one vial would be one dose. So then you count the vials instead of pills, but it's ultimately boils down to the same thing. And then to do accountability on vials rather than a drug, you just look at the vial to see if the fluid's been used or not. And then each protocol will allow like, and you kind of have to eyeball it, but like in the one study I'm doing, it's an oral IP, so they use a straw to drink it, and the protocol allows for like 3 to 5% residual to be left. They still consider that a full dose, but how do you know what 3 to 5% is? I mean, you just have to eyeball it.
Okay.
You know, so that's like, but that's technically not a well-written protocol. It should not even have that in there. I actually don't know how I would do that, but it's kind of like one of those things, you know, if it's empty or if it's somebody was not compliant. Like if they only drink half of it, okay, but if they drink 3/4 of it, it's still not compliant. Maybe if you can't see the bottom at all, I don't know. So the way they left it at was 3 to 5%, but they can't expect everyone to like measure that. So that's another one where you kind of have to learn an exception, not a rule, and use common sense to some extent. But when in doubt, always document. And as a CRA, if you see a bottle, like a vial that's questionable, you can ask the pharmacist or the PI, is this acceptable? Do you consider this compliant? If they say yes, then you document it. If they say no, then they made a mistake, right? and then you document that too. Try not to make those kind of decisions as a CRA. Let the clinicians make the decision, and then you document what they told you. Because the last thing you want to do is like make those kind of determinations yourself. Even if you are an RN, you know, it's not your patient, so. Ugh. Anything else? You guys confident as ever?
More than the other day, but
Yeah.
Better than when we came in.
Yeah.
At least I am.
It's a
Yeah.
process, so.
Yeah,
Okay,
and
that's
now
good.
it's time for those interviews, and let's see if you can go 1 for 1.
Okay.
yeah.
That'll be good.
You might. You
Yeah.
might.
It's good to try.
I've seen people go 1 for 1. It technically won't be 1 for 1 because it will be like 3 for 3. Because you'll have 3 interviews for the same job.
Yeah, and sometimes you're interviewed by a panel of people.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
And if
3,
they
4.
like you, then you graduate to another
Yeah.
panel. And if they like you, you go to the
Yeah.
boss, like in Mario Brothers.
WebEx and all that.
Yeah.
You may have to come in person.
Yep. They might fly you out.
Yeah. Pay for
One
your
of
hotel
the-
and your ticket.
One of the viewers, one of my viewers, he wasn't a student, but he's someone that watches. He was a coordinator for oncology, and then he got flown out by a CRO because they needed oncology CRAs. So they flew him out to interview him. He said he did very well, and he didn't get the job. And they paid for his flight, hotel. So maybe they found like a slightly better candidate, but he ended up finding another job, which was even better. He didn't have to relocate. But yeah, I mean, sometimes you'll think the interview goes well, and it's really not. You know, it's nothing
Found
you
someone
did. There's just
better.
someone a little better.
Right. That's subjective.
Yep.
Right.
But what are you still not comfortable on?
The other day with Chris, I had a clear picture of what we were looking at. I'm still a little bit shaky on everything we're looking at on this side of it.
Monitor side?
Yeah, on this, yeah, on going through the regulatory side, I guess, over here.
Regulatory, okay.
So, what I was going to do, get on the phone. I just text my brother, hey man, I got a whole bunch of. I want you to go over it with me. The next couple of days. That way, and if I got any questions, you know, I can ask him. I can reach out back to you. But
Yeah.
I just need to get around it more. And
So
you can
just
understand.
thinking themes, all right, for regulatory, like essential documents. That's like this regulatory binder looks pretty intense and intimidating.
And I think that's probably more so what it is. You know,
Yeah.
I'm admitting I'm admitting to a fault.
Because there are these
I
huge
think I'm more so
binders.
intimidated by this.
Yeah, there are these huge binders, like sometimes 3. Really what you're looking at, and again, it depends on the context that you're at, right? Like this matters. The context matters. Like what visit are you there for? Because you're not going to necessarily care too much about SUSARs until the closeout visit. I mean, you do care, but like you really need to have it done then.
Okay.
IMV you care about, or SIV you care about training. IMV less so because the site can train themselves, or you're just like overseeing it. Like, so the only things you're really concerned about are 1572, informed consents, IRB approval, financial disclosure. Okay, and then obviously any new staff, they need all this too. Delegation of duties log, that's an essential document. And this isn't a document that evolves over time. Delegation of duties.
Okay.
So those are really the things you need to be concerned with.
The reg binder is typically the TMF. Will that be the same?
No. So trial master file. Okay, trial master file is like Intralinks.
Okay.
Okay. Actually, it's not like, it is Intralinks.
Intralinks,
Intralinks is a trial master file.
Okay.
That's why we use it for the class. We don't. It's not the easiest thing to use, but it's a real tool. What the Trial Master File has is a regulatory binder for every site. Okay, that the sponsor and CRO have access to. So this would be reg binder for site 1, reg binder for site 2, and on and on. And then obviously you can break each reg binder down into its components, right? So that's what, and they're folders, just like our academy has the folders. So that's a Trial Master File. Okay. You may or may not, actually a good entry-level position is Trial Master File Specialist. We've had a few of our students get this. Trial Master File, they're just managing the different reg docs for each site.
Okay.
Right, and here's what they care about, because in one study, remember, there's about 30 sites on average, right? So imagine on any given day, one of those sites is likely to have somebody leave the staff, someone join, an amendment, and everybody needs retraining, right? Or the site moves, like there's maintenance that goes on. So what you did this morning with Monica was start up regulatory. That's done once, right? Everything else is regulatory maintenance.
Okay.
And those documents that she did with you are the essential documents.
Okay.
So that makes this less intimidating because honestly, as a CRA, I rarely look through all of this.
Okay.
I focus on the essential documents. Now you care about the SUSAR reports, but those are not essential documents. So you want to make sure those are filed. And you really care about those at the closeout, but if you have time, you should focus on those throughout the study. It makes it, if you break it down like this, it makes it way less intimidating.
Right there, right at the 1572 upon the essential document. Is that ICE?
ICF.
Oh, okay.
Informed consent.
Okay.
And remember, it has to be a IRB approved too.
Right.
And then site need their IRB approval every year. So that's another essential. And then the financial disclosure form is another essential. And the delegation of duties log is a working document that's constantly updated. That's really what you should focus on. If you're a Trial Master File Specialist, you're putting SUSARs in there too, right? Like you'll have just like this reg binder has sections, like the folders will be the sections too. So you'll have like 30, and then each one, maybe some subfolders. But that's all a Trial Master File is. But I know it is intimidating, and especially when you think you should know what every page is in here. And that's just not, like look at the central laboratory, okay? I mean, it's a huge section. All it has is lab reference ranges.
Yeah, I went through that.
All you gotta do is make sure it's here. And it's the most recent one.
Okay.
You don't need to read all this.
How do we
Investigator
know if it's
brochure.
the most recent one? Because I know that's some of the subjective questions. How do we know if it's the most recent one?
Either your lead will tell you.
Okay. Coordinator?
No,
Oh, no,
I
no,
wouldn't rely on the
no,
coordinator.
the
yeah.
lead, the lead.
The lead
Yeah,
CRA.
Yes,
Sometimes the
I got
coordinator is way more lost than you are. You're gonna have to tell them.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah, but like these, look at all these pages we could ignore. You're just checking that they're here.
Okay.
Okay, same thing with the investigator brochure. I mean, that thing is like, requires a separate binder. I've never read one of those. I don't know any monitor that's read the whole investigator brochure.
Okay.
That just tells you everything that's known about that drug.
And I don't think we will understand what is needed.
You
cannot
might.
understand all of it.
Yeah, you might.
Most
but-
of it is too medical.
Yeah, even the doctors don't read unless they're like nerds and they're interested in that particular molecule. Then they
It's
will.
too much research.
Yeah. But like, look, the rest is like site monitoring letters that get followed, like all your follow-up letters. You don't need to read those, you wrote them, right? You just make sure that they're in there. Supply reorder forms, like this is a lot of this binder just takes a bunch of administrative stuff. It's nothing that you need to worry about.
Okay.
Okay. Like, you just need to make sure they're here. But you don't, the only thing you need to go like document by document is the SUSARs. Like you will be given a table of every SUSAR number.
Okay.
And then you have to, and usually they wait till closeout visit to do it because they're not doing it as they should during the IMVs. And then they'll go through the SUSARs and literally go through everyone and make sure they're signed in data by the PI. And if any are missing, there's a website, there's a portal where you can print it out. So that's really the only thing, other than the essential documents. Like, these are the things you need to worry about, these things. Obviously GCP training, active licenses, IATA for the appropriate people. I would consider that part of essential documents too. And then training logs. But that's like the biggest theme we have. Training log. So that's it. I mean, that's what I look at. Protocol signature page is another one. I think Monica showed you that this morning. Protocol signature page. It shows that the PI received the most recent protocol. Protocol signature page. It's like a one-page document. Whenever there's a new protocol amendment, they will send a one-page protocol signature page that the PI acknowledges he received and read. So that's another essential document too. But yeah, the rest of this stuff is filler. Supplies, communications like newsletters when they send.
CBS too, right?
CBA can be in with the contract.
Okay.
But there should be a note to file. And if you ever see a blank section, like let's say this was blank, Central Lab, it's not that these are not somewhere. They may have just put them in another notebook, but there should be a note to file explaining where it is. Note to files are great. The GCP training, I mean, that's how it accumulates. Delegation log. CVs, some of these doctor CVs are like 50 pages. Monitor visit log, training log, IP supplies monitoring, and there's probably another red binder somewhere, but it's IRB correspondence. A lot of the pages are not really worth paying attention to. These are. Like these, everything we talked about right now. Protocol signature page. That make it a little less intimidating.
Exactly.
It's like a Cliff Notes version of what you actually need. What else? Anything else? Or you feel confident?
Overtime. I know I will.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know I will. Just dive into a little bit more.
A bit of time, but
You'll know after a couple of interviews where they're asking you things you may not know. But I'm going to help you now. Let's do the CV defense.